Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the third episode of Critical Analysis. Thank you for sticking around through thick and thin if you have. Be sure to like or dislike if you feel inclined. Subscribe and hit that bell icon to be alerted of future content as I upload it. So my last two videos were more on subjects that I have had rather annoying feelings towards. So as a change, I wanted to focus on something that I love. A title that I've been sitting on for a while playing. While this game simmered like a fine stew, so did my feelings towards it, and that game is Hell Let Loose. I will explain why, however, let's first take a look at the state of the FPS genre and the TFPS genre, and how we got this finely crafted game in the first place. To put it simply, the history of the FPS genre has been riddled with things many people consider both masterpieces of the fine art, right next to games that blundered so hard it would not be unsuitable to call them a garbage fire. Needless to say, from the days of the good old Bad Company 2, all the way up to today's Overwatch, the road of the FPS genre has been rocky to say the least. It got to a point where as a gamer, I decided to stop playing them altogether, save a few very specific titles that I already knew. But all that changed when I was introduced to the beautiful concept that was Project Reality. Based on one of my favorite FPS genre games ever made, the Project Reality Battlefield 2 mod effectively created a genre all by itself. The truth is, however, that the basic design of Project Reality was not dissimilar to another mod that I played extensively, Empire's mod. Regardless, the concept was to blend great action FPS gameplay with RTS elements, in turn putting a wide arsenal of mechanics and gameplay up to the players, who must work together as a true team to overcome their enemies. Project Reality played not so differently from Battlefield, with a few major differences. The mod tore down the walls between squads, allowing them to communicate across the board, making team-based offenses and defenses a reality. On top of that, the spawns were no longer guaranteed, meaning the team had to set up and defend their own spawn points, as well as attack the enemy's spawn points. Since its inception, a few games have picked up this design, with Project Reality becoming its own standalone game known as Squad. Then, when I had thought that the idea of World War II games had gone out of style, much to my despair, suddenly there was a massive spike in games based in the World War II in current gen. From the abysmal Call of Duty World War II to the abysmal launch of Battlefield 5, a game that I actually found quite good at launch, unlike most people. Seemingly out of nowhere, an explosion of World War II games came out of the AAA department. Then there was Scriptum. A game that came out of nowhere and honestly kind of wrecked my world. Never had I thought a game could so perfectly encompass PvP FPS gameplay with real-time strategy elements in a World War II setting as perfectly as Scriptum did. However, as I continued to play it, something really began to irk me about the game. And it wasn't until Hell Let Loose came out and I played it that I realized exactly what that thing was. Like its ancestors, Hell Let Loose and Scriptum do not play entirely dissimilarly to each other, however with one major difference. Scriptum seemed to put a lot more developer time into creating realistic, and yes, I'm using air quotes, mechanics behind its FPS gameplay. Unfortunately, however, a lot of these mechanics came off as just unnecessary, tedious, and clunky to play, almost as if the devs wanted to bog down what the individual player could accomplish in the game. Because of this, I had mixed feelings about Scriptum as I put more and more time into it. On one hand, I loved the different take on the Project Reality format. On the other hand, I came to dislike the base mechanics of the game, feeling as if the design was intended to handicap the players so that they would be inclined to play more tactically. It actually pushed me to play Squad a lot more because the mechanics in Squad were at least smooth. While this concept might work on paper, in practice it just ends up making a game frustrating and annoying to play on the individual level. For anyone out there that happens to be a game creator, listen to this closely. Clunky mechanics do not make people play a game more tactically. Tactics will come if a game supports them. Stop kicking players in the shin mechanically to try to enforce tactics. And while I was thinking this before playing Hell Let Loose, after playing it, I felt so much more strongly about this. Hell Let Loose showed me once again that there's a fine line between a game being realistic and it being tedious and monotonous. While having realistic gunplay and mechanics is not inherently a bad idea, take Escape from Tarkov for example, there is a clear line in the sand that shows that you have gone too far. When you have to stop your character every 2 minutes to take a drink of water, in a game where you are running around from place to place approximately 60% of the game, you have gone too far. And this right here is where Hell Let Loose truly excels. If Postscriptum is the realistic extreme and Battlefield 5 is the casual extreme, Hell Let Loose falls squarely in the middle, taking the best parts of both designs, both casual and realistic, without becoming too mindless, and without becoming too realistic, it becomes tedious. It's a precarious balance, but if it's done correctly, you will find yourself playing a game that is fun for both the individual player as well as the team as a whole. Hell Let Loose has found this perfect balance, taking what is important from Postscriptum's design and combining it with what is fun from Battlefield 5's design. It somehow manages to be a realistic adaptation while not forgetting that it is in fact a video game. The realism paradox is something that I've come across in many games that consider themselves to be realistic. It is basically stating that the more realistic elements your game has within it, the less fun the game is at the end of the day. There is realistic gameplay, and then there is obsession to adhere with realism. And while I can get over a few small tedious tasks, having mechanics in place that prevent me from raising my weapon in a timely, snappy manner, among other things, only really serves to bog down the entire gameplay loop as a whole, at least in my opinion. The game is already difficult enough from a team and an individual perspective, so absolutely none of it is necessary. I, as well as a lot of people I know, would rather not fight the mechanics of the game while fighting the enemy. Hell Let Loose has fixed this issue, creating a base that is a snappy, well-made FPS framework to build the game on top of, while employing realistic elements where they count, such as in places like tank mechanics, artillery control, explosive and ballistic damage, and even things like drowning in water with your gear on, which by the way is a real thing and did happen in World War II, primarily on the beaches of Normandy, but of course it did happen. So yeah, to all you people out there complaining about the latest updated map, fight me. My time playing video games has taught me a few things. One of those things is that tactics and gameplay are not directly counterproductive. That is to say, you do not have to nerf the players in order for them to want to work together tactically. Tactics come from the players, and Hell Let Loose kinda understands that. They create an environment where individual gameplay and team tactics are just as important as each other. Hell Let Loose is first and foremost a first-person shooter, and as such, it has the mechanics of a well-rounded first-person shooter. Then, and only then, tactical strategy mechanics come into play, allowing for the players to work together to achieve victory. Because of this, you can play the game like any other first-person shooter. And while some people say that's its biggest flaw, I believe it's its biggest attraction and its biggest strength, because while you can simply run around and shoot people as if you were playing Battlefield, that will not win you the game. And at the end of the day, it's the team that has stronger tactics that will win. But the fact that you can play as a standard first-person shooter allows for Hell Let Loose to be interesting for a far wider audience than that of the very niche tactical FPS genre alone, while introducing those new players to that genre and effectively growing the genre for everyone. There's also something else very interesting that Hell Let Loose does that caught my attention. It's really a breath of fresh air to see an FPS game use body-tearing mechanics and ragdoll physics in a non-joking way. Ragdoll physics has more often than not been the product of over-exaggeration in the past, in an effort for comedy. So seeing it used in a manner that accentuates the devastating power of artillery in World War II put a smile on my face. Truly, the way explosives shred your allies and enemies in this game brings a whole different emotion to the table while playing. One moment you're fighting like a standard FPS, the next you're walking through an artillery battered trench, wading through the arms and legs of your allies or enemies. Hell Let Loose has many of these moments randomly scattered throughout the gameplay. In a game Where a massive amount of the gameplay is team-based, Hell Let Loose still somehow finds the ability to give the individual player very personal moments of an almost cinematic quality. Hell Let Loose does not hesitate to show you the brutality of war in the slightest either, and it's truly outstanding gameplay that I cannot recommend enough. In essence, Hell Let Loose creates a fun and manageable tactical environment while ensuring that it has not forgotten exactly what it is, a video game. And I cannot praise it enough for this fact. Hell Let Loose is so much fun. It's brutal, it's difficult, it's fast-paced combat held together by a realistic base. And that's all it needs to be. I don't need to feed my character rations between fights, or drink water every 2 minutes to keep my running pace up to have an immersive experience. If I wanted that, I would just go play Immersion Airsoft. No, this is a video game, and while others may disagree, one of the strongest things about video games is that they can skirt the rules of reality to bring you a fun or terrifying experience. Basically, at the end of the day, all I have to say is I would not hesitate to recommend this game to any of my friends or viewers, especially if they're interested in World War II combat or tactical FPS gameplay. It's just a damn good game for the individual as well as multiple players. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on Hell Let Loose and the genre around it. It's really good to be able to give a game praise for once, as I don't enjoy making hateful videos as much as it seems like I do. It's much more fun to be able to gush about good games rather than having to shove bad ones into the dirt, that's for sure. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment if you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, well, I'm not going to force you to do any of those things, so bye, I guess. And hell, if you have Hell Let Loose and want to play, I'm always up for playing with new people. Invite me out to your group and let's kill some noobs, huh? Alright guys, peace!